We'll let everyone know. I am recording this video, so um, just make that disclaimer up front in case you're concerned about being recorded or you don't want to have anything you're saying recorded or whatnot. It may or may not ever be viewed again. We do have a YouTube page at Carilion where we have a few fitness videos and stuff on there. So if it shows up anywhere, it'd probably be on there. So let's give it about one more minute. I see one more person just popped in. So good evening, Sierra, looks like. And it sounds like another person popped in. We're getting a few more people. So everyone's muted when you come in, but I see you in there. And we'll just give it about another minute. Just give people a little bit of a chance, and then I'm going to go ahead and get started because I don't want to wait too long. It's about 6:02. We'll give one more minute here. See somebody else just joined. Alrighty. Okay. It's just about 6:03. I think I'm going to go ahead and get started here. And hello, Eve Shelton. I am doing good. I know it's been a long time since I did one of these. My hope was eventually to move to an in-person format. I'm still working on that. As you all know, there's a Delta variant now, so that might be throwing things in a little wrench into the works as far as trying to coordinate in-person classes with food, especially. Might still be able to work something out. I don't know. There's a bunch of different issues right now. What I'm thinking I'm going to do though is I will probably just do 2 or 3 more of these videos as we go into the fall, every couple of months or so. I do enjoy doing them, and I think it's a nice benefit for some of my patients and for some of you that have followed along. I think it's kind of fun to do, have these kind of motivational things every so often. So I will probably do that, whether I do an in-person cooking class again with a chef. That's what I'd really like to do as well. But like I say, I just don't know right now. It feels like there's a lot of variables right now with that. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So again, my name is Bert Herald. I'm a dietitian at Carilion Clinic, and I counsel in the outpatient setting. I mostly counsel weight loss. I counsel patients that need weight loss for a variety of different reasons. I've been doing these videos off and on and classes off and on for about 3 years now, I think. With the pandemic, we've done more of these videos and we haven't done any in person really since, gosh, I guess it was early 2020, maybe. We got one in person and just before the pandemic, if I remember. But the goal is just to sort of have a fun get together, kind of do a little bit of cooking. This is actually in my kitchen. That's what you're seeing here in the background. And what I like to do is just present a very simple, easy to do recipe that anyone can do. It's public domain. You don't need to go out and buy a cookbook. You really don't need much culinary skills to do the things that I do here. So it's very accessible, very low cost, very easy. And it's a healthy meal or healthy side dish, things that will fit on your diet. So if you are trying to lose weight, if you're worried about heart disease, you're worried about diabetes, it'll work for any of those conditions. And it's something that is near and dear to me. And I'll talk about my background a little bit, but I'm somebody that's been um, formerly obese, kept up, most of my weight off. I can't say I've been 100% successful, but the vast majority of the weight that I've lost, I have kept off and really changed my lifestyle. And so what we've got going on here as I talk to you guys, I'm just going to move the camera. I got a pot of red potatoes. That's what these guys are over here. So that will be boiling eventually. Probably need to turn this up actually. Let's get that going a little higher. And as soon as that gets boiling, it's It's going to go for about 15 minutes. So I'm going to have that go while I talk to you guys and while I present a talk. Probably a little alarm's going to go off here, and that'll tell me to turn off the potatoes. So you'll hear that go off in the middle of the talk. Let me go ahead and share my background so we can get started. I've got a little PowerPoint here I'd like to share with you all. Before I do that, let me just check the chat. Okay, there's nothing new there. So here we go. This should be sharing. And let me know if you guys are able to see the PowerPoint. If somebody can just make a comment in the chat, yes or no. Do you see the PowerPoint screen there? Let me know real quick if you would. Yes, okay, great. All right, so let's get started. So tonight's talk is going to be about tracking and measuring. And so these are tools, these are strategies to help us when we're trying to lose weight. And a lot of this stuff, I mean, I think we all kind of know what tracking and measuring is from a 10,000 foot view or whatever. But I like to kind of get into it a little more detail and explain some of the tools I use, some of the tools I recommend for my patients to use, some tools that my patients have told me about. I definitely learn things from my patients. And it's just kind of a nice little talk, I think, to do maybe once a year and just kind of review some of these things. So just to kick things off, for those of you who are not as familiar with me, I like to do a little bit of a bio because I think my background's a little different than maybe a lot of dietitians that you might run into. So I struggled with overweight and obesity really most of my life. Teenage years really is when it started. In my 20s and in my 30s, I did Weight Watchers, lots of yo-yo dieting, up and down. That was the old logbook we used to have in Weight Watchers back in the day. Some of you that are veteran with Weight Watchers probably remember paper logs and journals and these little sheets. I don't think they do that anymore. They probably stopped that 20 years ago, but I kept one of my old ones because it was a major milestone for me to get down into the 220s. I'd lost probably 60 pounds or something at that point. Eventually, I did these yo-yos. Eventually, I had the most major loss of my life, about 115 pounds. That was in 2011 to 2012, and that was obviously a really major event in my life. And that actually led me to pursue dietetics as a career. I used to be an engineer, actually. And so I found it was so motivating for myself, just seeing all the changes that made in my life. And also witnessing other people who had gone through major weight losses. Hold on just a second here. This thing's going to beep a little bit. Witnessing others that kind of went through this as well, it just motivated me to really want to help people with this process, because it's a very challenging process to lose certainly 100 pounds, but even 30 pounds, 40 pounds, even 20 pounds for some people is extremely challenging to do, and to keep it off is even more challenging. My secret, really, there was not a secret. It comes down to really hard work. There's a lot of aspects to it. There's a lot of tweaks to your lifestyle. Some are major, some are minor. There's a lot of different habits involved. It's not any one thing. It's really a lot of different things that allow you to be kind of somewhat successful with weight loss and management of your weight. And you have to also ride with the ups and downs. And the longer it's been about 10 years now after my loss and the major loss. And I can tell you that you have to roll with ups and downs with this. It's not ever a situation where you have final complete victory and everything is great. It's more like you have to continue to fight back episodes of regain and ups and downs that kind of go along with your life. It's something that goes along with this process. So, but some of the things that I did, I became a runner, and I put a little caveat in there. Now I'm mostly a walker and a cyclist. But for a while, for almost 10 years, I ran very consistently. I did marathons, a lot of half marathons, a lot of 5Ks, stuff like that. That was a lot of fun for me, and to see what I was able to do. A lot of that came about after the weight loss, and I was really able to dig into some of these running sports, and it was quite a lot of fun. Um, whether it's because of the running or whether it's because of just some genetics, my back eventually started having issues. So I am mostly a cyclist now and a walker. I do a lot of walking and cycling. I really enjoy cycling too. I like running better, but I just like being outdoors, and those things help keep me active. And there again, leaving engineering for dietetics, and that's me at Carilion Clinic down there. Um, just real briefly here, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but obesity is something that some people don't realize. It was actually declared as a disease state back a few years ago, 2013, by a lot of different organizations. And it's kind of classified as a disease state because of things that happen with your hormone levels. Um, Once you become obese, your body really changes, and the body really works to try to revert you back to kind of what they call set point. If you lose weight, it tries to bring you back up to that higher level. And so it does this through mechanisms with your metabolism controlled by the hypothalamus. It starts to lower your body temperature, for instance, makes you feel more hungry than you should, makes you less satisfied with meals, a lot of things. So it's a disease process, really, and it's not just about making bad choices. Obesity can be defined in a few different ways. The most popular is the body mass index greater than 30. It's also just sort of verbally described as a weight at sufficient level to cause reduced health and longevity. The body mass index has kind of come under fire by some groups here recently because it's never been a perfect indicator of how our body is, how, if we're in good physical shape or not. For instance, if you have, really, sort of like Olympic bodybuilder type people, they can have a body mass index of 30 or more, and they are definitely not obese by any, realistic standard. It really is more about body composition, how much fat mass you're carrying. And body mass index for most people, if it's above 30, yeah, you've got too much fat mass. And that's really what kind of comes down to. But again, it's not a perfect indicator, and sometimes, you don't want to get too hung up on some of these numbers. They're just sort of broad brush kind of attempts to figure out sort of how, where are we at with our body composition and health. Obesity really can't be cured, so you may hear things sometimes. Bariatric surgery, I think some people feel that that's a cure, but it's really not, unfortunately. I wish it were, but it's, there really aren't any cures for it. You sort of just have to manage it. This is a very detailed slide that kind of goes into the processes of obesity. I show it often with my talks. And it's just to make the point that there's a lot of hormones involved with the fat cells, that fat cells are not just storage houses for energy, but they're part of our endocrine system, so it helps to regulate these different hormones in our body. And those can have an effect on things that cause these various disease states, um, like cancers, arthritis, inflammation, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, even stroke, heart attack. All these things can be negatively impacted by obesity and these interactions with these various hormone levels. Um, there's also been a movement here lately, it seems. Some people are trying to argue that you're just as healthy being an obese person as a not, normal weight person, and it's all about, your lifestyle choices as far as, I guess, what you eat or your exercise. And that's really not true. I wish it were. I know in my own life, I can bear witness that that was not the case. I was never really sedentary. I was always pretty active, but when I was obese, I had pretty bad high blood pressure as well as high cholesterol, and those things did resolve pretty dramatically for me with weight loss. They don't always resolve with everybody. Some people have a genetic predisposition to those things, but for most people, they do improve or even resolve. You can actually reverse type 2 diabetes with weight loss in some cases. So it is a very significant problem, and it's something that most of us can manage. May not be able to cure it, but you can manage it, and you can make huge impacts in your life, even with just a modest weight loss. I mean, you don't need to lose 100 pounds necessarily. You just need to lose usually about between 3 to 10% is what they say, conveys a lot of benefit. So, um, So motivations for weight loss, I mean, I think we know a lot of these, but there's some that maybe people don't realize. I mean, there's a lot of sleep disorders associated with higher weight, and a lot of times, sleep apnea, I feel like lately maybe it's being diagnosed a lot more. People are more aware of it now, but it seems like a lot of people don't know they have it. And when you don't get good sleep, what I tell my patients is, the evidence shows that that can actually cause you to have more hunger, and it causes us to want to eat more, and we can be heavier just really just because we're not sleeping well. Is that's something we don't think about. And then as you gain weight, again, you can develop sleep apnea if you didn't have it before, and that just further kind of emphasizes more weight gain when you're not sleeping well. So high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, heart problems. There's a variety of heart problems that have been strongly associated with heavy weights, overweights, obesity. Increased inflammation in general, osteoarthritis. So, for those people that, maybe they've got, bad knees, bad hip, back problems, a lot of things that, the doctor will tell you, if you lose a few pounds of weight, that translates into many more pounds of pressure reduction on your joints. So if you've got, issues between your joints because of weight, even just a modest weight loss can make a big difference. And I've had patients tell me that after 5, 10%, 15% weight loss, they have so much reduction in pain that sometimes their procedures can get delayed or whatnot. They really see a lot of benefit. So that's a significant thing too. Cancer risk reduction, there's a higher risk of cancer with higher weight. And again, just 5 to 10%, they really say about 3% even. Somewhere between 3 to 10% is really what you need to kind of have to see pretty significant benefits. Um, this is just a graph of the scope of the problem. This gets updated every couple of years. You can see in the United States here, we just continue to ramp up, and yeah, that's just kind of the situation we're in. And then when we get some new numbers, I'm kind of scared to see what the pandemic's effect's going to be. I'm pretty sure that obesity curve is going to be a little steeper with all the enclosed situations that we're all dealing with. This is a geographic representation of the United States. You can see the Deep South suffers from it more than the West. So here's a few of the strategies, that are kind of, I guess you could say, evidence-based weight loss strategies, things that most of the medical experts agree on, that, these are solid strategies for weight loss. There's a lot of strategies out there that are not evidence-based. I mean, you just go to the newsstand at the grocery store, you'll see some of those. But I only really focus on the ones that are evidence-based. So we like to start out with a baseline sort of healthy diet, and with the acknowledgement that I realize right off that most patients, most people in general, they're not going to be eating a perfect diet right away. It can maybe even take years sometimes before people get there, and I don't really push people on that as hard as maybe some others might, because I just know from my own personal experience how hard that can be to have this perfect diet. But you do want to try to work towards a healthier diet. Lots of fruits and vegetables on the plate, whole grains, low-fat dairy, lean meats, very minimal added sugars, cutting out the sugary drinks. All those things help, and they will help you maintain weight losses. They'll help you lose weight, but they're not strictly speaking required to lose weight. But you do, I would say, to maintain the weight loss and to be healthier, certainly it is. And so we do try to work on that. And that's based on this concept called the My Plate. Um, and the next part of it would be more the tracking and weighing, and that's what I'm going to focus in on tonight a little bit more. That's a way to kind of keep us accountable, to set a calorie goal, to make sure that we're having what's called a calorie deficit, so that we are burning a little bit more energy than what we're taking in. So that's going to allow us to see that gradual, steady weight loss that we all want to see. Um, can you do weight loss without tracking and without weighing? Some people will say they can. The evidence shows it's not very convincing. Very many people can do that. I would never say nobody can. I think everyone's different. I mean, there are some people I have counseled that they almost eat the same exact meal every day. literally like 5 days a week, maybe 7 days a week, and they might alter it a little bit week to week, but they're very consistent in what they do. And if you lock in a pattern that already has a calorie restriction in it, maybe you don't need to track as much. But the vast majority of people I work with, they do use these tools in one form or another, and that really helps them to see reach the goals that they want to reach. Exercise program, I would say, is vital. I really think exercise in whatever form you can get, and I recognize that there's some people that cannot go out and run a 5K. Even walking is hard or impossible. I mean, it's what you're able to do at whatever level you're at, to try to stay physically active almost every day, really. I mean, sedentary lifestyle is deadly. It's bad for us in so many ways. And we know from research that people that are most successful with keeping weight off are the ones that stay active. They don't become sedentary again just because they lose weight to a certain value. They have to stay active. Support is another weight loss strategy that's out there, and there's a lot of online support now. There's things on these apps where you can coordinate with other people and give them kudos and thumbs up and all that. Um, there's the more traditional support like Weight Watchers groups. Um, there's a group called Taking Off Pounds Sensibly that has a bunch of chapters throughout the country. I always thought those were helpful. It just depends again on the kind of person you are. I would say if you don't want to do group support like that, oftentimes support from a family member or a friend, somebody you trust, can be very, very helpful, definitely. And I've seen results of that with my patients, people that have supportive family members, supportive friends, they do seem to do a little better. I mean, I think it's easier for them to stay on track. And of course, as a dietitian, I'm another piece of the support structure there. We can set up appointments and you can come see me periodically, and that really helps keep people on track too. So tracking calories, activity, and weight, there's a lot of different things we can track. So why do we want to track? Maybe that seems obvious, but I'm quoting from, again, some evidence-based standards. There's a document that I kind of base a lot of what I do for therapy. It's a 2013 Guideline for Management of Overweight and Obesity in Adults. There's an expert panel that was convened, and they put out this consensus guidelines. Covers a lot of different aspects of managing weight loss for patients. And their quote is, comprehensive lifestyle interventions provide a structured behavioral change program that includes regular self-monitoring of food intake, physical activity, and weight. These behaviors are recommended to maintain lost weight with the addition of frequent, i.e. weekly or more often, monitoring of body weight. Just turn that sucker off. And our potatoes should be done over here, so I'm going to let that just sort of cool down. So there you have it. And I mean, anyone who's kind of dealt with overweight, obesity is probably familiar with this. It's not, like I say, it's probably not rocket science to anybody, but it's it seems to be something that not everyone follows or agrees with sometimes, but it is considered to be a very useful tool to track and monitor. So how to go about it, there's definitely the old school method. So like that Weight Watchers log. Back in the old days, I mean, that's all we had. We just had little booklets. We'd look up calories. Of course, we always had the nutrition panels, I guess, or mostly always had that since I've been alive. I don't think we've always had it, but so there's that. I mean, you can always use a paper journal and record that way. But in 2021, really probably since the early 2000s, we've had a lot of different apps that you can install on these phones, the smartphones. So some of the most popular apps that I both work with my patients on and I also observe patients using would be the MyFitnessPal, Lose It, Noom, and Fitbit. I'd say those are probably the most popular. I sort of keep learning about new ones here and there, but I would say those are probably the most popular. Indirect methods, there's other ways of going about this. So for some people, I will actually help them craft a custom menu plan. A lot of dietitians, I guess, do something like this. And you can go to all kinds of different lengths. You can do just a single day plan, or you can do, like I try to do, a 5-day plan. Or actually what I really try to do is just give them options so they can create their own plan from foods that they like, and still make it so it's healthy. It's a little bit tricky sometimes to create those plans, but for people who really don't want to track per se, but they just want to have a menu and just say, this is what you're supposed to eat, that can be very helpful for them, and gets them to where they want to be as well. It's another way of doing it. There are meal services out there, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but there's HelloFresh has popped up a few times here recently. I've seen some people using that, and they have what they call a calorie smart option, where you can order meals that are reduced calories. Magic Kitchen is another one. That one's more for specialized medical diets, so like renal, kidney disease. That's a good one for that. But they also have a diabetic menu and just a weight loss menu, low sodium menu. There's a few other services. There's emails, Plan to Eat. They can help you actually with purchasing ingredients, making grocery lists. And we're probably all familiar with Schwann's to some degree. I know they've been around for, I guess, decades. They actually also, they'll deliver meals to your door. They have a few healthy options. They have a category called Live Smart. And if I were to rank all the different ways to go about healthy eating, I would probably say, well, not probably, I would definitely say that if you can make your own meals at home with fresh ingredients and do it all yourself, that's really always going to be the best way. But, a lot of us, we're trying to lose weight the best we can. We don't have a lot of time. Sometimes you get pushed into things that are just not, it's not the perfect situation, but it'll still meet the goals for weight loss, and you can kind of compromise and have a somewhat healthier way to go about it with some of these meal services. Recipes with calories listed, of course. Again, you could, if you do everything from recipes and you know what the calories are in the recipes, generally you still have to track when you do that. But, again, I guess it depends on how good your memory is. If you can keep track of how many calories each recipe is through, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you can also stay to a calorie goal and see the weight loss from that. Um, so let me go ahead and kind of talk a little bit more about some of these options here. So this one is, which one is this one? Oh, this is the HelloFresh. Okay, it was covered up. This other little window here, I got stuck in here. So this was just a little screen snapshot of HelloFresh and what they have to offer there, and their meal plans. It kind of gives you 3 steps there. You can even log in with Facebook apparently. So that is one option. I have not tried them myself, but I've heard many good reports from some of my patients, and it looks, like I say, it looks fairly reasonable nutrition-wise from what I've seen. A lot of the stuff is kind of locked down, so it's hard to really dig into it a lot unless you pay the fees and subscribe to it. But I do believe that one is fairly decent. Um, this is another one here. This one is the Magic Kitchen. Um, this one, again, I think what makes this unique is really the renal diet. I have people that have kidney disease and they're on dialysis, or they're, almost to dialysis maybe, and they need to kind of really restrict things like potassium and phosphorus. And that's pretty tricky to do. It's really kind of hard to do on your own. I mean, there are renal dietitians at dialysis centers that will work closely with patients to try to help them manage that. But again, it involves somebody to make those meals. A lot of times spouses are getting up in age or may not be able to make special custom meals. So sometimes a service like that's very helpful, but they do have calorie restricted meals too, and they'll list the nutrients and the calories, and so you could potentially use it for weight loss as well. Um, these are a couple of other ones. Plan to Eat. Again, I have not used this one. This one, another dietitian told me about it a few years ago, but this one, you choose meals, get the groceries. It's sort of like um, it'll kind of give you the instructions, information to kind of put it together more or less, but you still have to kind of get it yourself. It's not a meal that's already made. And that's kind of what the plan to eat is as well. It's kind of a service that kind of gets the information together for you for these different meals, but at the end you still sort of have to make it. So it's kind of a compromise. You're kind of still cooking. It's still, it's probably a little healthier than the ones that are pre-made and just come to your door like Schwann's, but takes a little bit more effort on your part. But that does work for some people. And of course the Schwann's, there's a chicken breast fillet, it looks like on there. This one is from one of their what do they call it? They have a special name. I had it earlier on there, but it's a calorie restricted menu plan that they have, and you can see. I mean, that's 110 calories for that. The sodium is reasonable. I mean, it could be a little lower, but that's decent. And so you have that option as well to get one of those entrees. Um, and this is just an example of recipes. So we're fortunate to be in an age now where there's just, I don't know, there's probably millions and there's billions, but it seems like it. There's probably millions of recipes online. Um, the only issue is, a lot of them are more tailored for taste and to be delicious, and they're not necessarily as healthy for us. Which always kind of brings up the question, well, why is it that unhealthy stuff seems to taste so great? And that, I don't know if I have a good answer to that, really. I think that there's a lot of really healthy foods that do taste great. I think there's a lot of really bad recipes out there for healthy food that turn people off. They're just not really done well. It sort of takes I think it kind of takes some culinary talent to put together good recipes that are healthy. I think you can deep fry pretty much anything and it'll taste good, even if it's really, not a great recipe, it's not healthy. But it takes a little bit more effort sometimes with vegetables and things to make them taste better. But anyway, so this is one resource, the USDA MyPlate. If you go to choosemyplate.gov, and just to let you guys know, you'll get information about these web links and stuff mailed to you in a document after this class. So you can always take notes if you want to, but you'll get this information sent to you as well for these websites and stuff. But USDA MyPlate's been around for quite a while. And they have a lot of recipes. They have cookbooks. It's all free material. You don't have to pay or sign up for anything. This is run out of the USDA, and they've got videos. They'll actually walk you through how to make meals. So, again, that's a way to sort of track in terms of, how many calories this has. I mean, it says right on there, 129 calories for a sixth of the recipe. And so that's a way that'll help you track because you know how many calories you're dealing with. And there's a lot of good online sources. I tell my patients usually go between USDA MyPlate, go between the other one is American Heart Association or the Diabetes Association. Those are some three really good ones. Plenty of recipes, lots of videos, very healthy. Um, there's cookbooks abound. Weight Watchers, for instance. Has just, they've been putting out good cookbooks for many decades. So in terms of the tracking app, this is an old screen snapshot from MyFitnessPal from a few years ago. This is probably back when I was doing my 100-pound weight loss. I don't know. My face is on there. This is just a snapshot from the actual computer version of this. So you can run the MyFitnessPal app, the tracking app, from either your computer or your cell phone. So the goal of this app is you record everything you eat and drink, and it tells you how many calories you've got for the day based on your age, your height, and your weight, and your gender. It takes all that into account, just like I do when you come into my office. We use the same equation. It kind of estimates what we think your calorie needs are. Does a pretty good job. The formula works pretty well, actually. And so what it will do is allow you to lose about 1 pound a week, up to 2 pounds a week if you're really doing good with exercise. And you just have to be very vigilant. You have to track daily, but it'll definitely help you achieve those goals. You can also record your workouts. There's a thing for cardiovascular. You can put strength training in there as well. Generally speaking, most of these apps are not very accurate when it comes to estimating how many calories you burned from physical activity. So if you strictly follow them and it says, oh, I burned 500 calories from this walk I went on with my dog, and you try to eat those 500 calories, you may not lose weight. Uh, Unfortunately, it seems to overestimate. But in general, it does a really, really good job tracking the calories. I mean, that's really what it's for. That's its biggest benefit, is to help us figure out, what are we doing when we eat, when we're having those snacks, how much energy are we taking in? Because a lot of us don't really know. I mean, we just really don't think about it. And one of the things these apps really teach you right away is to make better choices when you start realizing just how bad some of the choices you were making were. You start cutting back portions. You start deciding, well, maybe I don't want that extra serving. Maybe I need to eat half of what I used to eat. And it can really help you sort of calibrate what you're doing. And I think that's what's so powerful about it. And it's so convenient, the app especially. So this is the app. This will run on your phone. And I'd like to say MyFitnessPal has been around a number of years. A lot of doctors I've noticed mention it to their patients now. It's usually the go-to that I mention to my patients. It's pretty solid app, and it's free. Anyway, these are some screen snapshots from that app on your phone. So on the left is kind of what you would see when you first pull it up, and sort of shows you your goal for the day. So it's like 1830 for this case. And then you put in how much food you ate, and then it tells you how many calories you got left. And you got 1450 remaining. So that's kind of how it works. And you can put in the different meals there. Um, Middle screen shows you maybe what your current weight is, what your goal weight might be, up to 2 pounds a week loss, for instance, for the goal. I usually do between 1 and 2, and 2's on the higher end. And it'll track your weight on a little graph there. This is not a very good illustration of the graph, just a straight line. But if you have more data points on there, you'll see it go up and down, and you kind of see how you've been doing over the course of many months, even years. I think one of the more powerful features of this and some of the other apps is building recipes. So if you do this, like a lot of folks have to track for, a couple of years really, or even maybe longer, to achieve goals and just to maintain their weight. So it's good to be able to put in some recipes, like things that you make a lot that you're going to make again in the future. So with the MyFitnessPal, on the main screen there's kind of this little dot, dot, dot more on the lower right. So you click that and you get to the screen where it says My Meals, Recipes, and Foods. That's where the little red box is. You click on that, brings up that middle screen, Meals, Recipes, and Foods, and you just click on Create a Recipe at the bottom. And on the third screen, that pops up. It says Add Recipe. Do you want to add from the web, or do you want to enter ingredients manually? Adding from the web is a feature I honestly have not used, but apparently what you can do is you can actually give it a website of a recipe, and it'll automatically pull all the ingredients in and just create the recipe for you, which is pretty amazing. Um, I've tried it maybe once or twice, and that was a few years ago, honestly. So back then it wasn't working that well, but I wouldn't be surprised by now if that's pretty good. What I usually do is the manual one. Says enter ingredients manually. So I click on that, and then it brings up the screen on the left. And so what you do is just add ingredients for the recipe. Whatever the recipe is, you just look at the recipe and say, okay, I need, for the entire recipe, I need chicken breast. So I need, let's say, 3 ounces of chicken breast, or whatever it is, 6 ounces maybe, or maybe if it's a bigger recipe, it might be 8 or 16 ounces, whatever it is. I know that it has 3 cups of brown rice, so I put that in there. I know it has 2 cups of broccoli, so I put that in there. And then when you're done with all that, it's going to ask you, give it a name. So that second screen says Save Recipe. Give it some sort of a name. Tell it how many servings it makes. And then it will calculate how many calories per serving that recipe is. You can see it says 272 there. I don't know if you can see my little cursor, 272. So So that's it, and you just click save, and this next window here, I'm showing you that I'm using that recipe that I created. So when I go in to add a meal for my lunch, I can select recipes. That's what's highlighted right here. Lo and behold, test recipe is right there. So that's the one I created. Pull it in, and there it is. It has all the stats. It'll give you calories, carbs, fat, protein, gives you everything. So that's pretty amazing to me. That's a lot easier than the old days, and I lived through the old days. uh, and you could sort of track, but it was nowhere near this analytical, precise. This is really nice to have, and it's so easy to use. Once you get these recipes created, um, sometimes I'll have people complain because they don't know about the recipe builder, and every time they make a meal, they're like, well, I don't know how to add all this in. I have, tomatoes, and I've got some beef here, and I got this and that, and I got to add all these things in one by one. It's a real pain. I was like, well, you should use the recipe builder. Um, so that helps a lot. Um, the other tool that MyFitnessPal has, and a lot of these tools have it. I don't want to say only MyFitnessPal has this. A lot of these apps have recipe builders in them, and they have barcode scanners. So it's not just this particular app. But you can scan the barcode, and I just showed some Nutter Butters, arguably not the most healthy thing, but it does have a barcode on it. So I scan that barcode there on that package, and it pulls it up, shows me for 4 cookies, it's 260. It's got a little bit of protein, not enough, but a little bit, fat and carbs in there. And that's it. That's pulls that in there, and then you can add that as a snack or as a meal or whatever. Whatever the thing is that has a barcode, it just pulls it in for you. So that's extremely convenient once again. Okay, so that's pretty much my little tour, I guess, of some of the features of these tracking apps. Um, there's other aspects to, as far as measuring things, beyond just using tracking apps. I did a talk, I guess last year, kind of went through some of those items. There's food scales. I recommend patients get food scales if they can, because that helps you measure out foods. And then when you're using the tracking app, you can tell it how many grams, how many ounces of whatever it is, and it's easy to pull into the app that way. Of course, bathroom scales for measuring your weight. I talked about some of those in another talk as well. I think it's important to kind of be able to measure and track your weight. Um, it maybe sounds obvious, but some people really don't do that, and it's kind of hard to know then if what you're doing is successful or not, unfortunately. Tracking measurements is another thing that can help you. It's actually in some ways maybe I feel like it's almost a little better than weight. It's a slower measurement because your waist, your hips, your thighs, your arms, they don't change really quickly, but you will notice them getting smaller over time, kind of on a very steady basis, and that really can tell you, hey, I'm making progress here. Even if the scale's stuck, maybe for a couple of weeks or whatever, when you see the waist coming down and the thigh narrower, it's like I know I'm where I need to be. Like I'm on track. This is working. So I'll go ahead and move to the food segment here. I'm going to talk a little bit about it before I actually kind of show you the components here on my stovetop. So this is something I pulled straight off of my plate. So this is something you can make, anytime. It's really easy, very simple recipe, not super expensive. I like to think of it as kind of a summertime recipe because, it's potato salad. This is a mustard-based potato salad, so right away you're kind of getting away from some of the real heavy, let's say mayonnaise or cheese-based kind of things with potatoes, that we all think about. So, and a lot of people feel potatoes are unhealthy. I get that a lot. I get a lot of people asking me, can I eat a potato? Should I stop eating potatoes? Or they'll just come and tell me, I no longer eat potatoes because they're just so bad for you. And it's like, well, that's really not true. Potatoes have a lot of, particularly potassium, which is good for your heart. The only exception with that would be if you're on dialysis. If you have a really extreme medical condition, sometimes you have to limit potassium. But for the vast majority of people, potassium is very healthy. It's a very heart healthy mineral that we need in our diet, and potatoes are full of that. You know, it's a you know, it's not a high calorie food. It provides carbohydrate, which you do need some, you know, for energy. Um, and so, you know, I think like everything, you can make it unhealthy, you can overeat it, but it's not by definition something that's terrible. I would say though, I wouldn't necessarily eat potatoes or any starchy food in isolation. I always try to have some high fiber, non-starchy vegetables with it, maybe some, you know, higher fiber fruits. Um, and that's just because of, you know, it can kind of help slow the absorption into your bloodstream in terms of blood sugar. And that's kind of true with any carbohydrate. You always want to make them complex carbohydrates. Try to get some fiber in. That's the only thing I would say with that. I mean, um, you know, you always want to try to have fiber. You don't want to necessarily just have this huge, you know, carb only meal, because the issue with that too is you have no protein. You know, protein helps to kind of balance out the meal, helps keep you feeling a little bit more full, as does fiber. So this is a good side dish. There's nothing wrong with it, but it is a side dish. It's not really a meal. It shouldn't be a meal, but it is a decent side dish. So anyway, the constituents of this are, you know, they call them new potatoes. It's basically just little small potatoes. I use red potatoes today for mine. It has olive oil, some mustard. I actually use Dijon mustard, which they suggest as an alternative, and I think that was a pretty good change. So I put that in there for mine. It's got celery, scallions, and parsley. So it's got a few things in there, brings up the nutrition a little bit. So why is it healthy? Well, you know, it's low in saturated fat. So here's the stats on that. Things a lot of times you'll look for, I guess you could say the low-hanging fruit, not to use too many food puns here, but seems like they always come up somehow. But you want to look for things like lower sodium, so 300 milligrams or less for a serving is a good rule of thumb. This has 130. You want to see low saturated fat. So this is 1 gram. I mean, you're not going to get much lower than that. It's extremely low saturated fats. That's a heart health plus. You want to see some fiber if you can get it. This is 5 grams of fiber. That's actually pretty good. For something like this, that's pretty good in fiber. And I would say a lot of that's coming from the peel on the potato, because you're not peeling them. You're getting fiber and potassium from that peel. Gives you some additional nutrition. So that's a good thing too. There's really no added sugars at all. 0 grams of added sugar. Um, Total sugars, that's really just that's talking about some of the starches and things in the natural sugars that are in it. You know, that's not something to really worry about when you see that. The added sugars is something that you want to always try to minimize. That's really not considered very healthy for your heart either, to have a lot of added sugars, and this has 0. Protein is 5 grams. That's coming from your yogurt, so that's giving you some protein. So while it's not as good as a full meal, it actually does have a lot of good characteristics that make it more healthy than just, you know, eating some Lay's potato chips, for instance. Um, and again, potassium, you can see at the bottom, 878 milligrams. That's quite high. It's like maybe a quarter of your day's worth of potassium, something like that. So yeah, low sodium, high potassium. We also have vitamin C. It's fairly significant actually in this one, 10% daily value vitamin C. Um, Low in calories. So 220, 210 for a cup. You know, if you're on a lower calorie diet, have half a cup. But uh, but that's pretty reasonable too for a side dish for a lot of folks. So this is the recipe here. And again, this is going to be emailed to you, and you can actually just look it up. It's online on the USDA webpage. But basically, we've got the potatoes, we've got some Greek yogurt, a little bit of vegetable oil. I use olive oil on mine because it is a very heart healthy oil. I opted for the Dijon mustard. Celery stalks I actually already had on hand, so I didn't have to buy those. I bought some scallions, some of the green onions actually, and some parsley leaves. And I used Italian parsley because it looked better, frankly, to me than the other parsley. Just had nicer looking leaves on it. And you know, I always make little modifications. I love mustard, so I added more mustard. Mustard really has no calories in it, so you can pretty much dump as much mustard as you want. I'm a mustard person, so I like that. Um, Same really with some of these other things. If you prefer celery, you can always bump that up. I mean, that's really not going to hurt you to have more celery or less celery. My potatoes, you know, when I went on bottom, they're slightly bigger than what they showed in the picture. So I ended up with a little bit more potatoes than I think what they had said. So I ended up maybe adding a little bit more Greek yogurt. So, you know, I made little tweaks in it. It's not going to change the stats very much. So while I was talking here, I already had this pot going and it was boiling. And and that went for 15 minutes. And what I'm going to do next is drain it. It's actually already been kind of set aside, cooling a little bit, but I'm going to drain that. And then I'm going to go ahead. I've already got these other ingredients measured out. And you know, I can go into more depth if needed, but generally I find, you know, nobody really wants to watch me chopping celery or chopping parsley, so I I did that ahead of time. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of show you what I did, show you the components, mix it together, and then I usually like to take that time to just have general discussion. If you guys have questions, I can sort of chime in and answer those. If you periodically want to unmute and ask a question, we can have a little conversation as I go through this. But basically what I'm going to do is just sort of move the camera over. Let me go ahead and end this sharing thing here and stop the sharing. There's my head. Okay. And what I'm going to do is move this over to the tripod. So just bear with that for a moment as I get that repositioned. Okay, so there's my potatoes in the pot, and those have already been cooked. And then what I have over here, kind of like on a cooking show, I've got everything already measured out. So this is the green onions. This is the celery, got that all chopped up. This is my Dijon mustard, and I used Greek yogurt, so it's just like Chobani, plain Greek yogurt, and some mustard and a little bit of the olive oil in that. And this is the chopped Italian parsley, which you can kind of see. It's chopped, but it's the Italian version. It has kind of bigger leaves on it than the other the other parsley. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and pour this out. So if you guys have any questions on anything I talked about tonight, feel free to ask. You can always unmute, or you can put it in the chat if you don't want to unmute. That's fine. And what I normally do when I do potatoes like this, after I boil them, I'm mashing them because I like mashed potatoes, but get that a little bit better drained. Alrighty, so that's what that looks like. Those are just some red potatoes. So I don't know if they don't really look, I guess they look kind of brown on here, but they were red originally. So what I'm going to do is really just sort of mix in some of these ingredients. So there's really no rhyme or reason to this. This thing's going to talk to me here, I guess. Everything these days is super electronic. So what they have you do is sort of mix in the Dijon mustard and the oil and all that first. But I don't think there's really necessarily a rhyme or reason to it. I think they just give you an order to do it. But there's that. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that in there. Scoop all that out. Alrighty, so we'll just kind of mix that in. And the goal is, you know, to not boil these so long that they become mashed potatoes. I think these are right on that threshold where they're trying to kind of mash a little bit. They may have boiled a little too long, and they sat in the hot water. That was probably got a little bit more cooking done that way. And these are the green onions. So they said to put 2 in there. I put like 3 because I like onions, and again, I think I have a little bit more potatoes. You chop up the white part and the green part. Always kind of chop the ends off where the root is, of course. And I usually chop the tips off as well, just because they look a little haggard and they may not be quite as clean. So mix that in there. And we get antioxidants. I mean, as far as the nutrition part of this, you get your antioxidants from things like the green onion. Antioxidants are, helpful as far as for your immune system. They help to combat what they call free radicals, which are kind of these, it's a chemistry kind of thing. It can cause oxidative stress, cell damage in your body, and antioxidants are thought to kind of help repair some of that. So those are kind of some additional benefits from some of these vegetables, and especially the brightly colored things like peppers. Those are loaded with antioxidants, or things like berries. Brightly colored fruits and vegetables have a lot of antioxidant benefit. And they're thought to be anti-cancer as well. So, and then that's not really a topic of weight loss. One of my colleagues, Angela, does talks on that as far as anti-cancer benefits of some of these foods. But, obviously none of us want cancer, so I think it behooves all of us to try to have the fruits and vegetables in our diet, if not for weight loss, then for some of those health benefits. Again, here's the parsley. This one has some vitamin C. I believe most of the vitamin C actually may have come from the parsley. And that's another one that's good for your immune system as well. So that's really all there is to it. I mean, it's kind of fun to have the in-person classes sometimes with a more complicated recipe. You have the chef in there, he's sitting there frying up some fish or something, and it takes a little longer maybe, and there's more to it. But, when it comes to just the day-to-day living with, doing weight loss, doing healthier diet, healthier eating, for me personally, I like a lot of simple stuff that's easy to do. One of the recipes I like to do is not even really a recipe. It's just, basically boiling up some beans, putting them in a tortilla, a little bit of low-fat cheese in there, some salsa, and you're done. You've got a pretty decent meal. Maybe have some fruit with it or something, and a glass of milk or something. But basically, very healthy, very simple meal, low calorie, not a lot of prep, doesn't take a lot of time. And if you use something like the Fitness Pal, if you use a calorie tracker, you know, you can make sure that you're not eating too many burritos, that you've got that, the proper amount, proper portion sizes that'll help you with your weight. So that's pretty much it for what I was going to present. Does anyone have any questions or any feedback? Anything from the talk? Anything regarding the recipe? Anything like that? I know we finished a little early. Sometimes we run till 7:30, but our talk wasn't super long tonight.
Delbert, I have a question. Thank you. It was very interesting. I enjoyed watching it.
Mhm.
How long did it take you to lose the 100 pounds eating this way?
So it was about a year and a half.
Okay, which is
Um,
good.
yeah, and I averaged usually around, I think if I looked at the entire span, it was about a year and a half. I'm sorry, about a pound and a half a week, roughly.
Well, that's
Um,
great. My
and
problem is I had a gastric bypass in 2016, and I
uh,
started gaining weight back from stress, and I've gained like 70 pounds back, and I'm trying to get a grip on things, get it
mm,
get eat right. So got to
yeah,
get
I'm
it back
sorry.
down again.
Yeah, and that can happen to everyone. I mean, honestly, it's happened to me more than once. When I said I yo-yo dieted, at one time I had lost 70 pounds, gained it all back.
Yeah.
Um, and there was
So
another time,
easy.
it's really easy to do. People don't always realize that. And it's not just saying, oh, well, you lack willpower or you got lazy. It's nothing like that.
Mhm.
It's really this constellation of hormones that push you to, and it's changing your metabolism. It's making it so easy to gain it back. And it's your body sort of conspires against you. I mean, it makes you have low willpower. It makes you hungrier. It makes you less satisfied. And so,
Right.
yeah, it doesn't matter how incredible high willpower you have. There is no one that's superhuman enough to really never fall to that, you know?
Yeah.
And and bariatric surgery, unfortunately, is not a cure. It does help
No.
a lot. I mean, it can actually kind of modify those hormones, and it does make that process better. But, over enough time, eventually some of that seems to start to kind of rebound and,
Mhm.
start try
It's
to
been
pull your
five
weight back up.
years. I'm sorry, it's
Um,
been 5 years, and I put, like I said, I put the 70 back on, and everything just came back. And I actually was going to get a revision done, and I found a really good doctor here, and he said, well, let me go down in there and look, and then I'll decide if I want to do a revision. So he did that, and he said it looked really well. All I had to do was cut back on my eating. So that's what I'm going to try to do, and that's why I joined you.
yeah, well, thanks for coming. I mean, I still to this day, I still use a lot of these tools. I still have
Mhm.
relapses in weight. I am not as low as I was after the 115 pound loss. I've had ups and downs, smaller ones. There haven't been 70, 80 pounds. And I've just learned to have to roll with some of that. You do have to get on top of it, and you can't let it go too far. But I think I I hate to sound defeatist, but I think it's kind of impossible in some sense to lose all the way down to this perfect weight and just stay there like a robot because
Yeah.
it's just too hard. Your metabolism, no matter how hard you try to do weight training and exercise and all that, try to boost your metabolism, it's still suppressed. I mean, you lose 100 pounds, it's suppressed pretty dramatically from what it should be.
Mhm. I lost
Um,
137 pounds in seven,
yeah,
8 months.
yeah.
So yeah,
And they've
but I
done
was very
studies.
sick.
They've done studies on metabolism and they've taken measurements on people such as us, and they
Mhm.
found that, oh, your metabolism should be, let's say, 1,600 calories, but you're actually at 1,000 or
Yeah.
1,100. And so basically, you can maintain your weight at something ridiculous like 1,100, and it's supposed to be 1,600. And so
Mm.
you're supposed to somehow maintain your weight at this ridiculous low level of calories. Well, nobody can really do that. I mean, it's really
Yeah.
hard to do that. So that's why these regains happen. The hope, I guess, is over time that metabolism will readjust and maybe creep up a little bit and sort of go a
Mm.
little higher as time goes on. I saw a theory out there that said that,
Mhm.
maybe if you gain back intentionally, sort of regain 5 or 10 pounds after you lose all the weight, that sort of starts your metabolism a little higher and might make it easier to sustain.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know.
Well, I
It's just
appreciate it. Every little bit counts. And I'm just going to try to start making small goals, small steps, like by watching you and learning to cook different ways and things like that. And I really thank you for that.
yeah. Well, you're welcome. And like I say, I think in today's world, I mean, if you can embrace the technology, I know sometimes there's learning curves with these apps, and there's so much technology now, it just makes your head spin off. But
Mhm.
there's a lot of really powerful tools now that we never used to have. All these various apps. There's all these fitness trackers. There's all these recipes that are online that are free. You don't really have to even get a cookbook anymore if you don't want to. You just go online. There's, like I said earlier, there's these services out there that can help you with meals. So there's just so much available now that wasn't out there 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Yeah,
Um,
I
s-
was doing some keto, and keto really worked for me, but I need something to help me really keep it off. I need to change my habits,
yeah,
and keto doesn't really do that for you.
keto will work in the short term. Very, very few people, if any, can really do that long term, and there's still pretty significant debate how healthy that is to do for a long
Mhm.
term lifestyle.
Right. Right.
I have seen patients that have tried to do it longer term and they get some strange things like kidney stones and
Mhm.
gout. There's other things that seem to happen. And a lot of them are miserable, to be honest.
Yeah.
I've never done low carb ever. And I understand that it can work, but so can, reasonable carbs. So
Mhm.
I generally will
Okay.
counsel people to try to just do kind of a balanced diet approach, at least to start out with.
Yeah.
Um, and that's usually what's more sustainable for most people. you know, so.
Okay. Well, I
Well,
appreciate you explaining everything.
thanks for joining.
Okay.
Any other
Thank
questions?
you.
Yeah. Any
Not
other?
for me.
Okay. Hope to see you
I'm sorry.
guys. Hope to see you again on a future one. And
Okay.
anyone else out there? Any other questions? Any clarifications on anything from tonight? Just looking at the chat there. Don't see anything popping up. It's a pretty good group tonight. That's good. All righty. Well, if there isn't anything else, like I say, this is recorded. If you miss something, there's a chance. Can't guarantee, but there's a chance it'll show up on. There's a YouTube channel that Carilion Clinic has. It's run by Carilion Wellness. If you Google Carilion Wellness videos, you'll find their YouTube channel. It may show up there eventually. And like I say, you'll get some materials emailed to you from tonight's class. So you'll get the recipe, you'll get some tips on weight loss. Everything pretty much that we talked about will be emailed to you. So if you missed something, you want to see something again, those are your two options. You know, you'll get the materials emailed to you, and then eventually you'll actually be able to see the video again. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Okay.
We'll see how that goes.
Well, thank you very much. You have a good night.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody, and I hope you all have a good evening. And stay tuned. Hopefully, we'll do another one of these in a couple of months or so. Alrighty. So bye bye for now.